Welcome to Survive the Haunt.
Yes. Hey, I'm back. It's been a little bit. It's actually been like 2 years, and I'm no longer the same person, no longer in the same place, or really just no longer who I was before. Not trying to say that in like a way that makes me sound like, oh, I'm a changed man, or just like things are different. I don't want to sound like that. But uh, yeah, if you can tell, I'm back. I've been kind of trying to think about things I wanted to do in my life and trying to think about things that brought me joy. And podcasting, believe it or not, might have been one of the things that made me feel a little bit better. Kind of something I enjoyed doing, something that I put a lot of work into. And I stopped after only 3 episodes. And then I got to a point where I was a little too scared to get back. I felt like I let myself down, and I was just not motivated to pick it back up. And it wasn't until recently that I decided that, nah, need to cut that bullshit and I need to get back into this. I need to do things that make me happy. Truthfully, this is what makes me happy. Some things that's been going on in my life is I am now currently a student at the University of Kansas. I've finished what I was doing in Hutchinson, like some of you guys know, and I moved to Lawrence, Kansas, and I've been here about half a semester now, and safe to say I really enjoy it, and I feel happy here. And part about me feeling happy in a place was trying to do things that make me feel happy, and part of that was playing a lot of video games. And while some might not say that it's an issue or a problem, but to me, I was playing a lot of video games. I wasn't going out with friends. I wasn't being sociable, or I wasn't doing anything to try and like make me a better person. So I would just play video games all day long. And after a while, that kind of started to affect my personal life and those around me. And I decided to cut that habit and instead replace it with something that brought me joy that was also productive. So I decided to do this. Man, it's actually really good to talk to you guys again. It's been a while. I think last recording was in like October 2021. So yeah, we're back and we're doing it, and we're gonna do our best to stay on a good schedule. Being in college is a little hard for me to get down a good schedule, but I'm going to make a valiant effort to keep doing this and keep making content, even if it's just for me or my mom to listen to. I'm going to do it because I think that this proves to myself that I'm able to market myself and do something productive with my free time instead of just really doing nothing. So, without a further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, everybody, to Survive the Haunt. For those who are new here, this is a podcast run by me. This is Austin. Hello, I'm your host here. One things that I like to do with this podcast, I like to discuss horror movies, and while we discuss them, I could do what everyone else does and just like give a plot summary and just kind of discuss what cool things or things I thought were good in it. But here also, what I wanted to do is I want to focus on mistakes that characters make throughout the film, and I want to discuss what they could have done in that situation to try and keep them alive. Hence the name Survive the Haunt. So today's film, it belongs to a genre that is usually dominated by the killer toy. Examples of this can be famous films like Chucky, Demonic Toys, or like the really recent Mathregan, also known as Megan, but they got a 3 in it, so I had to say Mathregan. All these are kind of horror comedies, and part of that is while you're going to be scared and while they're going to have scary visuals, there's a lot of jokes because at the end of the day, our characters know that there's a toy chasing after them or trying to kill them, a blend of two different types of genres. And I personally kind of like the killer toy genre. I know sometimes it can be a little old. I did like Mathregan, sorry, Megan, and I really do love the Chucky franchise. There's just something about their satire or understanding what they are that really stands out to me, and I actually really enjoyed it. Benny Loves You is a British film made by a single individual. His name's Carl Holt. He did literally everything on this. He directed it, he wrote it, did all the special effects. He did everything. And he's truly what a up and comer filmmaker embodies. And the fact that he was able to just make something out of nothing, like a lot of us want to do but never are able to, is really amazing. When Carl was around 40, he decided that he really wanted to make a short film, and the fact that he hadn't made one yet kind of sent him into what he called a midlife crisis. So he decided to dedicate 2 years of his life to make this short film. This movie was filmed in 2014, 2015, and really is low budget. I think it was only around £15,000, which I don't know what that is in America bucks, but really, really cheap. And I will be honest, sometimes it does show, but hey, at the end of the day, this dude made a movie and I have not. So I can always let somebody's flaws like that just go because it takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to actually make something and put it out to people. I know, like, that's what I struggle with, even with this, is I struggle making something for people because I'm worried about what people would say or what people would think. So I just procrastinate and I don't do it. I will say that one of the problems that I have with this film is there's so many montages. Typically, a montage is just used to like tell a lot of things really quickly or kind of jump some time. In film, there's this idea of show not tell, which literally means instead of me saying, "Oh, we need to do this and this and this and this," I show you that we did this and this and this. Better example of that would be like instead of outright saying, "Hey, my name is Todd. What is your name?" It could be I could just walk in and be, "Oh, what's up, Todd?" And that already gives you this is who this person is. This is what they do. It's just being able to tell an audience or a story in visuals without having to use words. But this movie uses a lot of montages, but I think what that outcome comes from is they just filmed a whole lot of stuff. And usually, when you don't have someone punching up on a script or cleaning a script, you tend to have a lot of, "Oh, I don't know how to get here. Oh, we'll just do this." And you use a montage, which isn't a problem, but there is a lot. And I'll call them out as we go because there is a lot of montages. I do think a funny game would be to anytime I say and then a montage goes, take a shot. Then in the comments, I want you to tell me how drunk you are at the end of this. I'm kidding. Please don't do that. I do not condone alcoholism. Like I said before, the director is Carl Holt. He also stars in it. Carl is a all-time horror fan. This whole film is filled with a bunch of references from the past of like past horror movies. So I'll call those out as I see them. There's a lot of good ones, and then some of them are just shoehorned in. But hey, if I made a movie, I know for a fact that I'm going to throw some references in there because I absolutely love this genre. And if you're watching this or listening to this, you do too. So we'll all enjoy it. So my job is not to discuss how these films were made or explain things behind it. My real job here is to discuss what our characters are doing in the moment and what they could have done to save their lives. We can't really do that unless we get into the film. So our movie begins. This annoying little kid, I don't think I caught her name. I think it is Ashley. But she's screaming her fucking brains out. And she's not like a little kid. She knows what she's doing. But it begins with her birthday. She's screaming. She really wants her new presents the day before her birthday. And her mom is just at her wits' end. I'm not saying that that's an excuse for what's about to come up, but she is clearly just tired. So instead of like punishing her child or like trying to deter her of just screaming or throwing a fit, she gives in and she gives this girl her presents right before her birthday. She started saying that the old toy was stupid and she threw him out into the toy bin in her closet while he was saying his recorded line, "You're special." Later that night, while Ashley is sleeping, a ghostly wind begins to move things around the room. The closet door opens and smoke billows out of the toy bin, and Todd repeats his lines, which are, "You're special. I love you. You're special." I guess what they're trying to use here is there's some type of evil magic entity that is bringing these toys back to life because, as you would think, Todd comes back to life. I don't know how it happens, but he comes back to life, and Todd decides that he's going to enact revenge for being cast out and kill Ashley. The film cuts with Ashley sleeping in her bed, and while she's sleeping, we see Todd in the background moving things around, and eventually it wakes up Ashley, and she starts to get really scared. She starts screaming for her mom, and her mom is at her wit's end, like I said. Literally, she Googles, is it legal to slap my kid? Which I'm like, don't slap your kid. What the fuck? But after a while, Ashley starts to scream so much that her mom comes in and just fucking slaps her across the face so hard that spit flies out and it leaves a hand mark. And she was when the mom or when Ashley starts to say what she was screaming about, she's like, "It's Todd, it's Todd." She's like, "You want Todd? Okay." And she like puts Todd in the bed with her, and she's like, "If you make a fucking noise again, I'll come back in here and beat you." She like doesn't really say that, but that's kind of what she says. So like Ashley's just sitting there terrified. She's just a little girl. She might be a little brat, but she's just sitting there terrified because her mom just put this doll who's trying to kill her and she knows is alive into her bed. Once the mom leaves, Todd slowly rises out of bed and looks at her, and Ashley starts to scream. Todd pulls Ashley by the foot, 'cause he tied like a rope to her foot, into the closet, like into like the bin, the toy bin in the closet, and the mom starts coming in there, and she's like, "What the fuck did I tell you? I told you not to make this noise." And then when she walks in, she sees like nothing is like she's gone. So then a light turns on in the closet, and the mom's like, "Oh, I found her now." So when she opens up the closet, I shit you not, it looks like she was murdered. That's what I can say. Ashley was murdered by Todd the bear, and it went from 0 to 100. Like, not only is she just dead, Todd pulled her fucking eyes out and like wrote in blood on the wall and had handprints everywhere. It's fucking scary. And all this kid did was want a new doll. She's kind of a brat. Not saying she deserved it, but damn. And that just starts the movie. The plot begins with a main character giving a voiceover narration talking about his youth. He was saying stuff like, "Some kids had it easy." And then he even calls out kids that were like beaten or abused and said, "Yeah, they had it easy." And I'm like, "No? What is this? What is this guy trying to say?" But then he goes on to elaborate with his like, "I would have taken all those things if it didn't mean that I had to deal with Benny." He gives us some backstory about how he works at a toy company. And that year, the company released this new toy named Roscoe, a robot toy. And the man who designed the toy is this pretentious asshole named Richard. But he wants to be special. He wants to be unique. So he goes by Richard, which is, I don't know, it's just dumb. And like his whole character is he's pretentious. He's an asshole, like through and through. And he wants to be French so bad that he corrects people like using real French words or like just using regular words. He'd be like, "Nah, you mean to say fart noise." So the film cuts into a commercial where we see Jack, which is our main character, aka Carl Holt. It's his commercial for his dancing disco robot toy that he called AIDS. So this is kind of part of the humor throughout the whole entire film. It's a little dry and to me doesn't land very well because they're making fun of haha he said AIDS because his robot's supposed to be like raid or raids. It's like robotic robot animatronic something dance something. I don't remember. But they use like AIDS and things like that as part of their like joke and for humor. And there's a couple other ones that just don't land. But we'll talk about them when we get there. But it is at the end of the day, it's still an indie movie, just started. This is kind of the humor you get with making your own film. So it's different strokes for different folks, I guess, but who knows? So the film goes on to really give us the idea that Jack is truly in a slump. He we see a scene where he brings back this girl to his place, and when they walk in, she starts screaming, and this is all shot in like a way of a horror movie, and it's just to show how this dude's a loser because he lives at home, his bed is still the same as when he was a kid, But one thing I will say that is interesting during the scene is while this female character, I don't remember her name, but while this female character is walking around screaming just because she sees the side of his room, she walks into a closet and the closet door opens and then she turns and screams. Which, of course, for those who've seen it, will understand that this is an homage to John Carpenter's Halloween because this is how like Michael Myers appears to Laurie Strode when they're at their final battle. So it is just another good reference to 80s slash horror movies in general. But after a while, we do get another scene where Jack is hanging out with his mom and his dad. It's his birthday. I think he just turned 35 at this day. And he has no intention of moving out, even though his parents mentioned to him, hey, you better learn to do this with me when you get your own place. He's like, why would I get my own place? Which, to be honest, kind of fair. I know if you've seen the movie, this is a nice house. Like, they have a little piece of land behind them and everything. Kind of a nice place. I would be hesitant to move out and find some shitty apartment in the UK myself. But hey, eventually you do have to grow up, but that's okay. But in this scene, we get a little montage of the coolest fucking parents ever. They are so sweet and genuine. The dad and the mom are both wearing party hats for their son's birthday and sashes. And the dad's hanging up a shelf, and the mom's making like little hors d'oeuvres, little like cheese skewers. And out of fucking nowhere, the dad bumps into a shelf. And the thing that he just hung up was some like statue, some ugly ass statue. He trips and falls, and the statue lands on his face, killing him instantly, just bludgeons him. His mom turns the corner and trips over her husband's dead body and trips and falls into the tray of toothpicks that she just set out, killing her instantly. And this is like in the first 5 minutes. I was like, what the heck? Which we can get into our first what would you do to survive. Fucking have coordination. Basic coordination. Come on! So after Jack comes in and discovers that his parents are dead, we cut 10 months later. We learn that Jack's living alone now. He's behind on his mortgage. The bank wants to come and repossess his house. And we get introduced to a new character who I thought was named Phil, but now I see his name is like David. But he's a skeezy realtor. I think that's what he is, like a realtor. And he's talking about, oh, this is how much money you have to make to keep this place up and going. And this dude is a skis bag. Like, he's very openly knowing that he can't do it, and he's douching him over. That's kind of all the characters in this movie, besides our main character. They do stuff that is, like, going to purposely mess up or fuck over our main character. Just because everyone else I guess, is in a society where everyone sucks, which might be realistic to regular society, but hey, this is a movie at the end of the day. So after Jack and David talk about what they need to do, David tells Jack, hey, sign this paper right now and I can maybe try and help you, but probably not. And this is when we get like the first little bit of violence, minus the 2 kills. But Jack imagines that when instead of handing back his pen to David, he stabs him in the hand. And you kind of think that it is happening until he snaps back to reality and he's just quiet and he just hands it back to him because he is a pushover. He's kind of written to be a pushover. After this scene, we cut to Jack working away in the night as Richard comes to the office where he's working to gloat about how good his life is. He's talking about how he just got this new position. He got all these good things. And he even says, I'm going to go to a Prince concert, which, behind the scenes, this movie came out in 2019. However, it was filmed in 2014, 2015. Prince was still alive. So a couple of times he refers to Prince, and they use the current tense of he's still alive, which I think is kind of funny, and it shows when this was. It kind of dates the film, shows when it was made, but it is what it is. So Jack's boss calls him into his office to discuss the terms of what Jack thinks is his promotion. However, instead of getting promoted, he gets fired. And when Jack pleads to his boss, which I think is named Ron, he pleads to his boss about, oh, I need this job, please. I need this job. I can't get a new job. He said, well, there is a position open. It's 2/3 of your pay, and he gets a demotion. But this asshole of a boss makes Jack say, "Oh, thank you so much for giving a job," even though he just fired him. So he makes him, "Hey, I just gave you a job. Smile, give me a smile." But something about his boss too. His boss is a dog named Precious. It's all over his desk. It's the one thing he talks about. He even treats his workers as good boy, good girl, or just like you talks to his employees like they're just animals or just dogs to him. Like he's an asshole. So Jack decides to get his life together. He puts the house up for sale. He decides that he has to put away all of his kids' stuff. He tears down all of the stuff in his room. But at the end of this, all that is left in his room is Jack, a computer. He hung up like business reports, business export stuff, just to look like an adult room. Everyone knows this is business, business, business. But the only thing that he has not yet done is Benny, his doll, is still laying out. We get a little scene to help understand why Jack is hesitant of getting rid of Benny, because the film jumps back to when Jack was a kid, and as young Jack was laying in bed, the door opens and a freaking monster, like an actually scary monster. It looks really good. Like starts to torment Jack, and he's screaming for his mom, "Mom, mom, please come in!" And the mom comes in, and is like, "Oh, do you have another nightmare?" And he says, "Oh, yes, yes, I did. Like you would when you're talking to your mom. You just pretty much shit your bed because you were scared." So the mom, she says, "I'll be right back," and she brings Jack Benny. "Oh, this doll will protect you from the monsters and keep you safe at night." And then we get like a little montage, young Jack and Benny doing everything together, just to prove that this is his best friend. It is his toy. So it's hard for him to give all this up. But Jack is a real adult now, and he decides to put up Benny and put him in the basement with the rest of the kids' stuff. In the night, we see that a storm has begun to brew, and sounds are coming from the basement. We get a shot where a pair of garden shears are pulled off the wall. Benny is alive. Benny takes the garden shears and he cuts the power to the house, causing Jack to wake up and go investigate. Jack arms himself with a lightsaber and finds all of his toys are out of the boxes. Like everything is running through the house. He's hearing little footsteps and things like that, but he still doesn't quite know what's happening. So he is wandering around the house, and he eventually comes to the living room where Benny is sitting in the middle of the floor, and surrounding him is just like this pile of dead stuffed animals. Their stuffings pulled inside out. One's being boiled alive. One's in the oven. Got shit in the toaster. This thing's like they were mutilated, but they're just toys. But Jack is so scared that he calls the cops. The next scene starts with the cops coming in and taking photos of everything that happened. And this is definitely an homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the little behind the scenes, the one of the reoccurring sounds, like a motif, is the sound of a flash bulb going off, like a camera. So he's definitely trying to make that homage to this with the sound. The police properly do not believe him, because he is saying someone came in and killed all my toys. And they're like, "Well, when you showed up, all the doors were locked and it was just you alone." And you start to think that the cops are like going to be like cops and be real cops and all. But no, they're assholes. They're like, "Hey, can you make me some tea?" Or then one of them's like, "Ooh, I'm kind of hungry." So they start to raid his kitchen cabinets for food. And these cops are a bunch of goobers. So the scene ends, and we cut to Jack at work. And this is when Richard, or Ricard, is spouting some French bullshit. Literally, all he's doing is just on the phone talking to people. And then, like, we get a line where he's just like, I think he's talking to a friend. And he's like, "Oh, no, no, you mean to say je ne sais quoi." And then it cuts for a second. He's like, "No, no, no, you can use that. You can use it like that." Like, he doesn't know what he's doing. So here we're introduced to Dawn, the new tech lady. We don't know why, but Dawn has the hots for Jack, literally out of nowhere. It's just a shoehorned relationship that comes in with all of these style of movies. She's a little annoying and really straightforward, and a lot of her comedy or comments are quickly to tell us that, nah, she has the hots for Jack. So the film then cuts back to Jack working at home, and he's interrupted by a pounding at the door. When he answers the door, we see that David, the realtor's pen, was left on this front step, and we get a glimpse of Benny in the yard. But after a while, Jack is wiped out. He's so tired, so he decides to jump into bed, and he doesn't notice that David's head is in the bed with him. When he kind of comes to and realizes that he's holding a head, he freaks out, and Benny bursts into the room excited to see Jack, and he's saying like, Benny loves you, or hold me, or cuddles. Benny has a surprise for Jack. He decided to kill David for him, and we don't quite know yet why. So in the next morning, Jack is left with David's head in his room, and he's like terrified. He didn't sleep a single wink of the night. He was just sitting there with a freaking head, just like staring at the door, terrified, as you would. Jack eventually gets the courage to leave, and he's carrying David's head, which I know is just him showing off, hey, look at this prop that we did. But it looked pretty good. It looked pretty good. We come in and we see that Benny has prepared Jack a breakfast. It's like toast. I think there's like a piece of cheese. It's like a really shitty breakfast like a kid would make. David's body, his headless corpse is on the other side, and there's like intestines all out on the table. And he like made him this feast because Benny will do everything he can to impress Jack. So it's at this time when he's quote unquote eating his breakfast that the douchebag cops from earlier show back up at Jack's house. And Jack has to quickly clean up the murder scene. He like hides David's body in a cupboard. He cleans up things around, and the cops know that he's in there, and they're like, we can see you, but they don't see him like cleaning anything, and they're just like, oh, we'll just walk around back. While like Benny's cleaning, or not Benny, while Jack's cleaning everything up, the cops are outside. They're walking around the back. They're looking through the windows. They get glimpses of him doing stuff, but they're dumb. They don't suspect that he's killed anybody. But after a little bit, Jack lets in the cops, and the cops were there just to ask to see if Jack had seen David at all, because apparently he's missing. Don't know how you'd be missing just that quick little time, but they say that David showed up to Jack's house to try and talk to him about like more house related stuff. I don't know how he didn't see that, but he's like, no, I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him at all. Well, the cops are then like, well, his car's at the end of your property. So after the cops leave, we learn that Benny killed David because David had a letter from the bank to repossess the house. And Benny did not want that to happen, so he killed him on the spot. I don't know if he just killed him to kill him or if he happened to know. I'm just going to go ahead and guess that some of these toys know people's true intentions before. I think that's the easiest way to discuss how they know these things. But then we get another montage of Jack and Benny cleaning up the house, and they end up burying David in the backyard. Sometime during this, Jack, I guess, just becomes okay with the fact that Benny's alive, because he just goes to work. He starts working, even though they just buried somebody and there's a freaking toy alive and it killed somebody. But Jack's working and Benny decides he's going to watch a movie. So he's watching this scary movie, and even though Benny will happily kill anybody, he still gets scared at scary movies. But it's during this time where Benny is watching this scary movie that Jack gets the idea for his next toy. He's thinking about making these toys the cuddly interactive toy killers, or these like baby dolls or other things like that that are cuddly, but they're also like serial killers. They're supposed to be an animatronic. They're supposed to fight each other. They have all these expectations for it. I highly doubt that would even be possible. Hey, you know, it's just toy talk jargon, just business, business, business. Well, Jack's boss loves the idea, and he gives him like 2 weeks to come up with a prototype, so they go to work. So we get instantly another montage of Jack and Benny coming up with concepts, and during this, Jack dresses up Benny in multiple different costumes, and they like take photo shoots. It's like one is a mummy, they make him a little coffin for a vampire. This is where we get a reference to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where he's dressed up as Leatherface, and he has a chainsaw. During this scene, this quick montage, we see that Benny kills a cat. He just sees a cat and just kills it. Throughout the movie, abuse to children and dogs, or like animals, are kind of just not mentioned, which to me is a little problematic. I say a little because it's definitely problematic. But it's just the way they discuss violence to animals is just not good. So after the montage, we cut to Jack working with Dawn, and Dawn shows off Jack all of her motion capture animatronic capabilities. And she demonstrated this by something that's really, I thought it was really funny, but it's a dancing, sassy monkey. Like, it's a flirty monkey that then does disco moves, but then hits us with, because it has to be this type of humor, hits us with the milk lemonade around the corner fudge is made. And he points to his butt. It's a lot of jokes like this, which I'm sure younger me would have really loved. So during this conversation, Dawn, while she's still trying to put the moves on Jack for no reason, they come up with an idea, or she gives him a, this Saturday I'll come over to your house and you'll cook for me. And he kind of agrees. And this is when Ron, the boss, comes up and says, Jack, I need you to babysit my dog, my Precious, on Saturday. With Jack being afraid to say no, he agrees to it, even though he doesn't like dogs, and we will soon realize that he does not like dogs. So it's while Jack is at work, we get a scene where a new realtor, who I guess took David's place, is showing off his house while he's gone. We learn that the girl who's taking the tour of the house is the girl that he brought home on a date who had like the whole freak out from earlier. This is the part of the movie that is kind of artsy, but it doesn't really work for me. So the realtor's walking around the house. He's saying all the good things about the house. He'll say something like, "Oh, isn't this house so cozy?" And the second he finishes that line, it cuts to the woman banging on the glass because Benny is behind her. Then he'll walk over to a cupboard and he's like, you can put a lot of linens in this closet." And says something along the lines of, "And you can fit anything in there." And then she says, why the hell will I go in there? And then it instantly cuts to her crying or hiding in the closet. So they do all that. It's all out of order. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's the movie trying to be artsy, and it works a little bit. The whole murder starts at the end of the scene when the realtor walks the lady to the front door, and as they're talking, he gets stabbed in the back by the for sale sign by Benny. Benny does a lot of like childish things with his. He makes his kills worth it. So like on the sign, he wrote "not for sale," just like haha funny. And when he stabs him with it, a shit ton of blood goes out. It is your typical horror movie blood spurt. There's a lot, and then we see like the whole what we just saw in flashbacks be put in motion. Girls running, girls running. The dude's not originally dead. He's just like crawling on the floor. But eventually, Benny's chasing around the girl so much, and she tries to hide on the couch. I don't know why you would do that. And we're about to discuss the stupid moves that she continues to make. But she hides in the closet. She calls 911 or 999 like it is in Britain. And Benny jump scares her, and she runs out of the closet, dropping the phone. And apparently doesn't take the phone call because no cops really show up. And then she hides on the couch behind the couch cushions where like we can see you. And this is when David starts to walk home and he's struggling at the door. And Benny decides that he'll make some tea. So he goes over to the kitchen, he starts boiling water, which I think he did before. But for the realtor who's stabbed in the back, Benny brings him a cup of tea and some biscuits. And he tosses the hot scalding tea on him, and I guess that kills him instantly. I don't know why, but that kills him. And then he takes the pitcher of boiling water over to the couch and pours it on the girl hiding behind the cushions, and it scalds her face. It looks pretty good, but she gets up, she runs away from Benny up the stairs and into the attic. And the second she gets in the attic, the ladder knocks over, and she closes the door, and she's trapped in the attic. And he scolds Benny like, "We do not kill people. We don't kill people when they're mean," or just things like that, which is like, the first time if I had that doll and it kills somebody, I am getting rid of it. I'm burning it. I'm doing whatever. It does not matter. Does not matter that it is like a favorite toy. That thing is gone. But, it doesn't make sense for plot purposes. So then we cut to a couple days later, and this is the day of the date. Jack convinces Benny to stay in the basement. He locks him up and he puts him in a crate and says, "You can't kill people. You can't do all these things." And then he goes upstairs and he starts to cook. He cooks for his date. And I know British food fucking sucks because it's British food. Sorry, all my British friends. But this dude makes beans and chips. Baked beans and chips, which are French fries. And that is his date. That's his meal. And it's terrible. So Benny knocks over the boxes that he was in and frees himself, and he decides to arm himself and get upstairs. And around this time too, Jack's boss drops off Precious the dog, and now there's a dog in the mix. And we can tell that Jack does not like animals, especially dogs for some reason, or he just does not care. Because he picks up the dog, turns around, looks at it, and drops it. And we hear the dog, like, get hurt. Like, it gives out a little sign of pain. This is when Benny arms himself. He grabs an axe in an homage to Nightmare on Elm Street, which I know he doesn't use an axe, but he drags the axe across the wall and sparks come out, which if you're OG Nightmare fan like I am, you understand that the first time we see Freddy Krueger, he's walking down the hallway and his arms are huge, and with the glove, it's making sparks on the wall. That he's just paying an homage to that. So then we cut back to Jack and Dawn during their date, and Dawn's like, "Oh, your birthday's coming up. Have anything planned?" And he says, "No, I don't really like birthdays." She says, "Yeah, I don't really like birthdays either." And then she goes into a monologue about how when she was a kid, she had this doll named Amy, who her dad didn't like. So the day before her birthday, her dad like threw away the doll and said, "I don't know what happened to it." And that night, she woke up to the sound of her mom screaming, and Amy tripped her dad and killed him by falling down the stairs, and then disappeared. And she hasn't seen her since. Which, I guess that's something you can bond over. Not really the meet cute that I would like, but hey. But it's during this time that Benny kills Precious, and I just out of nowhere, just kills Precious, and they do it in slow-mo, where Benny throws an axe and it hurls into the dog, and then from then on, they have this like doll, this like fake dog prosthetic thing that Benny then carries around. So Jack cleans up or tries to make right the whole dog death, which I don't know how you're going to do that. It's clearly dead, like its eyes are missing and it is bloody. But he tries to like clean it up. He throws the dog in the dishwasher or the laundry machine to try and clean it off, which this dude is so dumb. So Benny pulls the dog. He gets the dog and puts it on a leash and drags it around the house like it's a parade. And then Benny takes it upstairs where Dawn is in his room, and Dawn not turned around yet, or like doesn't know that it's not Jack, is like, "Oh, I've been wondering when you'd come back." And then as she's turning around, Jack jumps into the room, grabs Benny and the knife and the dead dog, and then she turns around and just sees Jack holding the dog and a knife. And then just like after a beat, he like stabs the dog's like, "Oh, I thought," he like plays it off like the dog was trying to hurt her, so he was gonna save her, which is like, this dude is crazy. But as he's doing that, he throws the dog out the window, and the boss pulls up. And as the boss pulls up, he comes to a stop, and the dog hits the window, and like a gory mess happens on the windshield. It is gross, gross. So of course Jack gets fired, and Richard takes over the Scare Bear toy line, the toys that he was developing. And in doing so, Richard calls his old toy, which is Roscoe, the like Roscoe a robot, calls him stupid and says, I'm done with Roscoe. These Scare Bears are going to make me rich." And on his way out of the building, the cops show up, and they're like, "We have proof of the dog," which they don't like arrest him or anything, but I guess it puts the cops on his trail. So Jack comes home from work and is rightly mad at Benny because when he walks in, Benny's made him like a birthday cake, made him a present. He like set all this thing up for Benny, and Jack is like, "No, I just got fired because of you." So then he just goes upstairs and goes to work, or he's just like moping around. And Benny tries to get his attention. Jack doesn't listen to him. He's like, I don't want to talk to you. And it kind of makes Benny sad a little bit. He doesn't really get sad yet, but Benny takes Jack's blankets and he pulls it downstairs. And this is when we see that Benny went and got Ron, the boss, and tied him up. So as Jack is untying Ron, Ron's like, you better let me go. Or he's like, you better let me go right now. He's like, yeah, I'll untie you. I don't know how this happened. And here we see that Benny drove Ron's car there, which there's no way this dog can drive, but hey, it is what it is. But during the time that Jack is untying Ron says, that's a good boy. And this is when Jack has had enough. He stands up and he asserts his dominance. He says, no, you will not treat me like that. Which, this is not the time. It's not a girl boss situation. He takes a picture of him first off, which I don't know why he would think this would work. But he takes a picture of Ron tied up with a bow on his head for blackmail purposes. It says, unless you give me a job, then I'm going to post this. He tries to blackmail him, which I don't know why that would work. That is clearly in your house, and you could just be like, no, this dude did all this shit. But Ron agrees to Jack's ordeal, and they come up with an idea that he will take over the senior advisory position and all that. And as Jack starts to untie Ron, Benny comes in and stabs Ron in the throat with a fork. And enough is truly enough. Jack has had enough of them, and he's decided that he's going to take Benny and tie him, or he's going to put him in a coffin, nail the coffin shut, and take him to the woods and bury Benny. So then we cut to, I think it's the next day or maybe a couple days later. Dawn comes to Jack's home, and here Jack kind of fills her in on something that was happening, to where they don't know that Ron's dead yet or anything like that. But he is like, he doesn't say that Benny killed the dog, but he was trying to come up with an excuse of why he killed the dog. And I guess she forgives him, because then we get another montage of Jack and Dawn cleaning up like blood and stuff from the house, which I think came from Ron instead of the dog. But they bond over it, which is like the grossest way to bond. Like, this girl is up to something. But it's during this time, of course, when someone should have killed Benny, lit him on fire, we got to the woods. And out of nowhere, by God, it can't be. It's Benny. Benny rises from the grave in an homage, like he looks like a zombie. And it's kind of creepy, but we can see that Benny's disposition has changed. And he walks home in the rain, and it's kind of sad. Like, even though this dude is a murderous doll, he like walks around and he sees, like, he goes to the park and he's sitting on one side of the teeter-totter and is just looking at, I have no friends, no one loves me. And then during that same time, it's like a little, the Dawn and Jack start a relationship, kind of go further with the relationship. So it's like a bonding situation between Jack and Dawn, and then Benny realizing that he's all alone and he knows what he has to do. So it's during this time that Dawn and Jack hook up, I'll say. We know that they did. And it cuts to the next morning. And Dawn is leaving the house, and as she's leaving the house, we see Benny in a ski mask and a knife. And Dawn still thinks that Benny is like an animatronic, so she doesn't think anything of it. She says, oh, cool doll. And she just leaves. But during this time, Benny runs after her, climbs on her car, and is like standing on the roof. And it's kind of funny. They play with the audio a little bit where he's saying his lines. He's saying "wee" and just things like that, like really enjoying it. But he's also like trying to get her attention, which I don't know how this bitch does not see Benny, who like on her driver's side mirror, like window, I mean, he's just standing there and she's just like tunnel vision forward, which I don't know how you don't see that. So it's during this time that Jack comes downstairs and he sees that Benny wrote stuff all over the walls like "time to die, whore," or just things like that. And he knows that Benny's up to something, and he runs to work because he doesn't drive. He doesn't know how to drive, apparently. But he runs to work, and as he gets in, Richard finds Benny in the lobby, and he grabs him and talks to Dawn, like sits down at the table with Dawn and goes, "Oh, I see that you got the toy." Because I think they had a plan where maybe she does care about him, but maybe also like she went over there specifically to get the prototype, quote unquote prototype, which is Benny. But during the time that Richard and Dawn are talking about Benny, they're talking about, oh, let's just go ahead and open it up because they want to see like what's going on the inside so they can copy it. Jack runs into the building and says, "Stop, stop, stop." Jack comes in and he's like screaming, "Oh, he's dangerous. He's a killer. Be careful." And rightly so. Everybody in the room kind of laughs at him. And he walks up to Benny and like, or Dawn, Benny, and Jack, because Benny at this time is still like pretending to not move. And he like, I guess he does this in a way to prove that he does. Because Benny's thing is he wants Dawn dead because he feels replaced. And anyone who like shows Jack any love, Benny gets jealous of and wants to kill them. That's like a lot of his motive for killing, but also not. But it makes sense. It makes sense. So during this time, Jack says, I think he says, "Dawn, I love you," and that like makes Benny come alive, and Benny stabs Richard in the hand. Then Benny turns to Dawn, and this is when Jack runs up and puts himself between the two, and he's like, "There is no me without you," or something like that. He just like pleads with him, and during this time too, we see that how Benny takes everything seriously, where Jack is like, I love Dawn," and then he turns and he's like murderous intention towards Dawn, and he says, "Wait, no, 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 I don't." And then he looks away, and then he says, Richard, I hate Richard," and then he turns to Richard like he's gonna kill him. It's just like back and forth to show that Jack kind of still has control over him. So Jack, Dawn, and Richard get out of the room, leaving Benny alone in the room with like 10 other people. Benny slaughters everybody in the room, leaving everybody dead, while Jack, Dawn, and Richard run to Richard's car and they go back to Jack's place to prepare for a fight. So during this time at Jack's house during the night, they're discussing like what they need to do. Is they all understand now that Benny is a demonic toy who wants to kill them, and they know that he's coming. And we get I think, yeah, we get an Alien reference here where Richard in French says, "Game over, man, game over." But during this time, we see that they come up with a plan that they are going to booby trap the house. And in a montage, of course, because it's a montage, we see them make traps. They take AIDS, the dancing robot, and they reboot him into a Benny killing robot. And during this time, too, we see that Benny is getting ready for a fight. Like he puts on like a mask type thing, and he gets two swords, like two sais, and throwing knives and things like that, and he's ready to fight just like everyone else is. So later that night, Benny approaches the house in another homage to Nightmare, once again dragging a knife across the wall and getting sparks. So Benny enters the house through the sewer and gets into the house. And during this time, I don't know if they just didn't notice it, Dawn finds a present addressed to her. And when she opens it, she sees that Amy, her childhood doll, is there. And of course, Amy is alive, and Amy tries to kill her. And this is when Benny shows himself to everybody, and Jack Six aids the robot after Benny, and they have an epic robot fight where, out of everything else in the movie, a lot of things are really shitty. Like, I say shitty lightly, but there's a lot of scenes that are kind of not the best. But this robot fight scene, I can see why it took so long because it looks so good. It looks like it's real, but it was all completely animated. And I found out after a while that Holt did it himself, and he had no prior experience. He just did it, and it looks amazing. But of course, here Benny beats AIDS, which that's really funny to think. But Benny beats his robot, and he's now trying to fight Jack. And during this time, we cut to Richard, where we learn that Roscoe, his robot that he neglected, is there as well. And Roscoe kills Richard by ripping his intestines out and then sucking them out with a vacuum. And this like he gives up. He just gives up and dies. It's out of nowhere. But Dawn is during this time. Dawn is fighting her toy Amy, and quickly realizes, this is a doll. I'm a person, and quickly overpowers her. Like kicks the knife out of her hand, and then the doll runs upstairs and tries to hide. She grabs the knife and she comes down and she like tears apart the doll with like stabs it to death, killing the doll. And of course, during this time, Benny and Jack are fighting, and Benny is about to kill Jack. Jack's kind of given up. He knows he's about to die. He's preparing to be killed when Roscoe turns the corner, and Roscoe wants to kill Jack. So when Roscoe tries to kill Jack, Benny is like, "No, this is my kill," and they start to fight. And they have another robot fight, which once again looks amazing. If you want a reason to watch this movie, watch it for this robot fight. I mean, it is so good, unironically good. But at the end of this scene, Jack triggers one of the booby traps that kills, quote unquote, kills or disables Roscoe, and Roscoe like malfunctions and just goes outside and he doesn't return. So Benny turns his attentions to Dawn because he no longer wants to kill Jack. I guess not. But we find out that Richard had called the cop, and the two guys, out of all things, they're like, "We've prepared for this situation," because apparently Richard might have told them, "Oh, we have these toys trying to kill us, or someone's trying to kill us." And these cops pull up, and they pull out BB guns, like airsoft guns. Which, why? So we cut back inside, and Benny has a knife to Dawn's throat, and Jack has to go upstairs and plead to him, "Please don't kill her, please don't kill her." And I guess that works. I don't know how he convinces him, but it works. And then Jack says, "Benny, I want cuddles," which is one of the lines that Benny says. So Benny drops the knife, he runs up, and he embraces Jack. And of course, as you would think, Jack pulls out a knife and is about to kill Benny when out of fucking nowhere, Dawn pushes the knife out of his hand and Benny and the knife fly into a direction, which he was about to kill him. Why stop? But Benny comes to, he picks up the knife and he starts running towards Dawn, and you think he's about to kill her when all of a sudden he front flips into the air and out the window in a slow motion shot, and he lands in the front yard where the cops are, and he tries to rush the police, where the police pull out the BB guns and start shooting him, and in slow motion, Benny's running at the cops with his knife in hand, and the cops are shooting these BBs, and it's like real bullets to him. I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but I guess it's just for laughs. But he's running, and he's taking shots, and it looks like the scene from Platoon is running in slow motion, getting shot. Everyone knows, everyone should kind of know what I'm talking about. Benny jumps in the air, and one of the cops shoot him in the head, killing him instantly. The second he dies, Jack comes down, and I guess is sad to see his friend die because he jumps onto the ground and is like holding Benny, which I know why. Actually, no, let me back up. While Jack is running outside, one of the cops shoot him a couple times with the BB gun, but Jack kind of treats it like it's a real injury. Then we get a shot of both Jack and Benny laying on the ground with their arms kind of touching, like they're both dying together. Which is so, it's dumb and it's funny, but it's just kind of a letdown. So then we cut to some time later. I think it's been maybe a week and a half, and Jack has packed up his home and is leaving town with Dawn. And we kind of wonder why or how he's getting away with it when the cops are there as well. So the cops are letting him go, I guess, to get a head start on the law, because, which kind of makes sense because I don't know how you're going to explain what is happening in there. So the cops let him go, and then we get a ending monologue where Jack is saying, "Don't throw out your toys because you never know what's going to happen." And during this time, we see an alleyway where the mysterious fog is rolling over, and there's toys in the garbage, there's toys in the dumpster and everything, and it's like kind of making the toys come alive. When we see Roscoe and Todd the bear from the opening are together, and they do a jump scare at the camera, possibly to set up a sequel, but who knows. And that's the movie. So when I said that the movie is not the best, I think this kind of proves it. It's a little messed up, and definitely could have used some work. But at the end of the day, this is this dude's idea. He did it all himself. Which recently there's been a couple of things like Skinamarink, for example. It's another example of someone doing everything themselves but doing it better. Because I like Skinamarink. I think some of you have seen it by now. But that's just an example of doing it better. One of my issues that I had throughout the film with it is in some scenes I could tell that the audio was just fucked. Like you'd hear a scream and everything peaks to where it's jarring for the most part. And it's just little things like that throughout the film that kind of make you realize, oh, this really is just a short budget film. It got distributed, and I was able to watch it on, I think HBO Max, Hulu. So clearly, people liked it. At the end of the day, I didn't hate it. I it it is what it is. So now it's the time of the podcast where we discuss what some characters have done and what I personally would have done differently. So, firstly, if I was put in a situation where one of my toys were brought back to life and tried to kill me, I do think it is possible to survive. I 100% believe it's possible. One things that people forgot in this film that caused them to die is Benny's just a toy. We see some things to prove that maybe Benny's stronger than just a toy, but at the end of it, he is a toy. And he clearly died by just BBs. So, do I think I would have been killed by Benny the doll? No. Do I think anyone should have died by Benny the doll? Maybe. I will say that Benny's one thing that he has on other people is surprise. He's able to sneak up, he's small, he can blend in. So, is it possible that some of these characters died and it's realistic? Yes. But what I would have done over all things is I firstly wouldn't have just buried my doll. I would have gone and found some type of incinerator or made one myself. That doll is dying that night. That would have happened. Movie over. Everything works out. Still goes to jail because he's 5 bodies or whatever in the yard. But hey, no other half. I will say after all this, I really did enjoy the film. It is definitely a movie that I'll show somebody if I just wanted to throw something on and just have a good time and understand that it's not the best, but just have a good time, show people. My one takeaway from this movie is don't be afraid to make something. I really did enjoy it. I think it is a low budget movie that needed some work, but also it was fine. It was funny in some parts. It made me laugh. Some of the scenes were good. Definitely a lot of homages to early horror movies that I did enjoy. It was fun to see some of them, but after a while they were just handing us references, which but overall, I think I might on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll probably give this movie like a 6. I say a 6 is pretty good because the idea alone isn't something that's new, and it's not like this is the worst version of this I've ever seen because Dead Silence still exists, and to me, that might be one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Compared to Dead Silence, I think this is a better movie, and I overall had fun. So, as I talked about earlier, I'm trying to start this back up. I know that this is a weird podcast, this is a weird episode, and while I've been thinking about everything, I'm going to come up with a better format, but I wanted to just make something. I wanted to get something out there to kind of show that I can do this and I want to do this. So I would say expect a podcast at least once every 2 weeks. I'm going to try and fit it in with my schedule. Once again, I am in college, and while I have some free time, this takes some time, and there's a lot of work that goes into this. So I'll try my best, and I make this promise that you should get a podcast, a minimum of once every 2 weeks, and hopefully you should get one every single Wednesday. I'm so glad to be back. I know that this is weird energy, weird format. I promise it'll get better. Next week, we're going to go ahead and watch The Witch. which you can watch on HBO Max. It is the VVITCH, The Witch. Came out in 2016. Stars Anya Taylor-Joy. I love this movie. Um, Hopefully this next podcast will be a little bit more well rounded and well thought out. Just wanted to throw something up there, get people excited again, to get me back in the move. So think of this as like a practice run. I promise things are going to get better. Just thank you so much for listening. I'm so glad to be back. Follow me on Instagram at Survive the Haunt, where you get some behind the scenes looks and some previews of what's to come. And I want to hear what you guys would have done if you were put in this situation. Do you guys think you would have survived? What are some things that you guys would do that I didn't do? But just thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time.